Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Apologies for that. As Benel has indicated, my name is Lungile Langa. I'm the Group Human Resources Executive at Airports Company South Africa. I'm also the President of the Human Resources and Leadership Committee. But for the purposes of this webinar, I am your captain for this Airbus A380 to Johannesburg. So we've got a jam-packed day. So buckle up and get ready for takeoff. I would like now to firstly introduce the speakers that we have in our panel. I've got Miss Lindy Magolane, who is our performance management expert here at Airports Company South Africa. I'm also delighted to introduce Mr. Daniel Muchuchuti, who is the ICT Director at Airports Company of Zimbabwe. And lastly, we also have Ms. Yolante Strikitsa, who is the Managing Director of Strikitsa Consulting, and he is also a global, thought leader in human resources. So we'll be quite excited to hear her insights on the performance management space. Just as a way of an overview of what you can expect, but maybe before I go to the overview, this is just a summary of some of the strategic work plan for the Human Resources Committee in ACI Africa. We've worked on the exchange program. I hope you can participate in that. We've got an ACI Africa Gender Equity Charter, the digital transformation that we worked in collaboration with IT. We've got the safety, health, and well-being for employees. We've got succession planning and talent management. So all of these, strategic pillars are available from the HR and Leadership Committee. You can make contact with us. But today, we are very delighted to be delivering the strategic performance management in airports to help our airports to manage performance effectively. We also do have guidelines, colleagues, that can be available at the end of this webinar. So I'm quite excited to share those with you as well. We can move on to the next slide. Just in terms of this webinar, the importance of why we need the session is for us as airports to be able to have operational efficiency, to have growth and sustainability in our airports, to create value for everyone. That includes customers, and includes employees and all the stakeholders in our airports. So that's why we need performance management. In terms of the strategic performance management guidelines, as I've indicated, we do have the guidelines that will be available at the end of the webinar. But really the importance of performance management is an integrated approach in which we can connect the performance of leaders, of individuals, as well as of the entire business. Because otherwise, without performance management, we are not able to track the performance and deliver on the strategy of the organization. It ensures that all steps from planning to execution and monitoring of assessments are treated in one cohesive process. It also aligns and confirms that business success and individual employee success are linked and are directly mutually reinforcing, which is also quite important. Just an overview of what you can expect then in this webinar. Like I said, it's a jam-packed day. We are going to, have a masterclass. After a masterclass, we'll have, the panels to also just weigh in. But in terms of the, just the content of the webinar itself, we'll cover KPI disaggregation. We'll cover the 3 C's, which is cascade, contextualize, and connect. We'll cover the cascading of the strategic KPIs. And lastly, we'll cover how you can utilize the SMART principles in your performance management process in your airports. But what's also exciting is we'll make it very practical. We'll have a practical demonstration of how you can apply these principles using an airport business case as KPI to show you how you can apply these principles that we'll share with you during this webinar. Then we'll have a panel discussion like I've indicated to understand this management, but also how organizational culture can help us to have effective performance management. Ladies and gentlemen, without wasting time, I will now hand over to Lindy, who will now take us through the masterclass of performance management. Lindy, over to you.
Thank you so much, moderator. Am I still audible? Thank you. So I think all of us here, for the most part, everyone in this room, when I looked at the attendance register, everyone in this room has some level of understanding about what performance management is. You have experienced a lot of different tools, approaches in terms of what to apply when you are managing the performance of employees in your workplace or managing your own performance. But the key question perhaps is, what is it that takes a good performance approach from just being good to making it more strategic? So some of us believe it could be the methodology that you use. We have things like your KRAs, you've got OKRs, you've got balanced scorecard. But is it also perhaps the type of technology that you use that enables you to make performance strategic? Again, also looking at whether the strategies that you're actually trying to implement, if they are well written, does that make your performance approach good? We also know just from experience and over the years, the practice of performance has improved over time. We now no longer just look at whether people are in the office and they are by their workstations. We are concerned with making sure that performance is aligned to what the business direction is. So we have made some strides in terms of creating alignment between performance and strategy, looking at performance scorecards and using different matrices. But when we think about the definition of strategic performance management, the key part to look at is not just the methodologies or the tools that you use. It's the fact that it has to be a cohesive process from start to end, knowing that when we talk about strategy, you need to have a strategy in place. You need to understand where the strategy is taking you. What is the goal of that strategy? And by virtue of that, it would advise your performance planning and management systems. But the bottom line is, at the core of strategic performance management is cohesiveness and integration. And part of what we're going to discuss then is going to take us into that process of looking at how do we get that integration working and working well. So the second question then also becomes, if you have a good performance approach and you managed to get it to be a little bit more strategic, what is it that drives collective efforts? What then makes it, you've got a good strategic approach, but what is it that you do to get collective efforts going? We know that annually or periodically, business leaders will go and strategize, and we've become really good at it. We are planning, but we don't always see how these strategies and plans materialize into actual results and results that create value. So while we have good strategies and all the improvements in terms of perhaps technological integrations and other tools that enable performance management, we are still challenged by the fact that strategies are only as good as our ability to execute them. So what is it that is missing to make sure that these strategies are actually executed to give us the results that we want? Is it the fact that when we talk to people, we are only talking about the strategy, but we don't care to check in on whether people understand what the strategy is about, how it affects them, and how they participate? The practice tends to be, we will tell people about the strategy, we will tell them about the results that we're looking for, and we'll go as far as to give them performance contracts, but we don't really check in if they understand. And as you can see on your screen, you can communicate the strategy, but have different reactions or different understandings and create confusion. So what we then need is to ask ourselves, why is it that we don't have buy-in on strategies? The key element that we need to do is to be able, as leaders, as managers, is to have the ability to convince employees of what the strategy is and why we do the things that we do. This is the premise of what cohesion is. When people understand what it is that they do, why they do it, so that they are able to create value. So to build onto that, the questions that we have is, what then can we do to convince people? So at a basic level, we know that the airport business, for its intents and purposes, is that what we do is to build, maintain, and manage infrastructure for air travel. That's easy. The question about the why is also relatively easy. We are in existence as airports to enable global connectivity for trade, tourism, and communication. But I can ask you if that explanation from me moved you. Are you convinced at this point in time to participate in this airport business? What is it that will make you say, I'm really excited to be a member of this business? The key thing that we realize is that for people to be in alignment, we need more than methodology and strategies. We have to create meaning to the performance processes as well as the strategies. And that's why we have a concept called affiliation, which looks at how we move strategies, but factor in issues around behaviors and culture to get that collaboration going for the results that we're looking for. So in short, strategic performance is both structural and it is motivational. It consists of alignment, which looks at the type of structures that you have, as well as the methodologies that you use. And then it looks at affiliation. And that is, what is the purpose around why we do what we do? So affiliation and alignment in action looks like, if some of you are aware, there is a story of a cleaner that was working at NASA, and the president had visited for the day. And the president saw this cleaner and asked him, what is it that you do here? What is your work? The cleaner replied, I'm helping to put a man on the moon. This story is a great example that emphasizes the idea that everyone, regardless of their job title, regardless of the complexity of the work that they do, they have a role and they play a critical part in achieving a common goal. So that is also one of the things that we are concerned with as leaders in the airport business, that our staff and all the members within our airport community have the same understanding and the same affiliation to the business that says, I am helping this business to facilitate the movements of passengers and goods. So what brings us here is that we also try to understand, what does alignment and affiliation look like in the airport business so that we can drive strategic performance that yields results. As mentioned by our moderator, there are some guidelines that were written by the HR and Leadership Committee for ACI Africa. And in those guidelines, there are several principles that are discussed. But the first question was, we wanted to understand what is the challenge that managers and employees generally have with understanding and implementing performance that is driving strategic imperatives. At a very high level, we've got issues around how to get the strategies to be aligned properly. So you may have an overarching company strategy, but you also have different divisional or functional strategies. We want to know how do you get that alignment across the board so that the company strategy does not get lost in translation? We also know that we have a challenge with disaggregating compounded KPIs. So at a company level, we'll have one big KPI that we need to achieve. But once we have to break it up and send it to the different functional areas for execution, we tend to lose what we intended to do in the first place. There's also an inconsistent application in terms of the rules of how to disaggregate or cascade properly. You'll find that environment 1 does it a certain way and it looks like it works for them. Environment 2 does it a different way. However, when you bring everything back together, we find that there's inconsistencies, there isn't a standardization of processes and even reporting mechanisms so that we are able to monitor performance properly. And lastly, we tend to have a strong focus on how we do things. So basically saying, if I process certain payments, I'm concerned with the process of paying, but not so much around the impact of what we are doing. So this strategic performance management guideline aims to bring all of that together in a manner that is simple and it's easy to apply. And we do that through the 4 principles that are contained in that guideline. You have contracts that you can actually measure and see whether performance is yielding what it had intended to yield. So for the purpose of me then getting into...
You're not sharing.
We lost your,
not-
can you put your screen again, please? We lost you. Thank you.
Okay. All right, just a sec. Did that happen?
No, can't see her.
Yes. Can you still see?
See, but it is not in presenter mode. Thank you.
Okay, just a sec.
Participants, we are sorry for this inconvenience.
Vanessa, are you able to share on your side maybe?
Let me try to share.
Are you seeing something?
Mm-hmm. Can we start to...
Here, Lindy,
Okay.
I
You
think
can
you are
finish.
here.
Slide 20.
Yes.
Slide 20, please.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Sorry about that, colleagues. So for the purpose of the example or the case study that we're going to look at in today's session, I've created sort of a fictitious profile for the AXA business because I want to be able to, as I'm taking you through each principle, to show you how it works step by step in the real world when you're applying it. If you can move to the next slide, please. So I'm going to introduce you to Airports Company South Africa. What you're seeing on your screen currently is the key strategic statements that are the basis of our case study. And basically, it's what is the vision of this organization? We need to know so that when we start to build KPIs, when we start to look at how to apply the principles, that we are not losing what we have intended to do for the business. So our vision is to be the best run airport network in the Africa region, with a mission that we will be providing unrivaled travel experiences for our passengers and business services. And our objective is to improve the efficiencies that will increase our passenger satisfaction. In terms of our values, we use the acronym called PRIDE. Our values guide how we do what we do. We do everything with passion, results, integrity, diversity, and excellence. The value that we are promising to our customers, our stakeholders, is that we are here to connect people to people, places, dreams, and opportunities. So with that understanding, we'll move on to the next slide. Thank you. Thanks, Panel. Please move to the next slide. So in terms of the first principle, where we talk about alignment, we are concerned with, once we've understood what this company wants to do, we have a strategy in place. We want to make sure that we have goals that are clearly defined, that we are able to disintegrate them. This will help us to avoid silos or duplications of efforts or any confusion in the business around who needs to do what and when. So this principle then is the foundation of us taking strategy and making it executable. There are ways in which we do that, and it's by asking key questions. So there are literally about 5 questions that we will ask. But as you interact with the questions, you'll find that you can have more to discuss. So for example, you need to know, what is the objective that this company wants to achieve, and what is the goal aligned to that? And by virtue of that, what are the KPIs that we are going to need, and how would we measure them? So all of those questions start to address that. Who is participating in these KPIs? Who do we hold accountable for the KPI? Who enables us to do what we need to do? Who provides inputs, etc.? Then lastly, we are also concerned with how will we collaborate as different teams to make sure that we work collectively towards the same result that the business is looking for. And lastly, how will we measure that each one of us has been successful in what we needed to do in our respective functions? So going back to the example that I gave earlier around the AXA business, who wants to make sure that they're offering a passenger experience that is unforgettable. When we ask these questions, when you think about the type of goal in the airport business that would align to this, we would talk about the passenger satisfaction survey, the ASQ. And with the ASQ, we know that there are multiple participators in this process that influence the overall achievement that we will be looking for. So if at a goal level, the company says, we want to increase passenger satisfaction, from a KPI perspective, we know that passenger satisfaction is measured through the ASQ. We would have an idea of what is the rating that we have currently. What score is it that this business is running at? Let's say, for example, you are at 3.5, a score of 3.5, and then for you to increase, you are aiming at getting up to 3.8. You then start asking the questions, who are the participators in this, and what is their participation? So for example, you could use IT and say, well, firstly, identify the contributors. You say there's IT, there's operations in the form of facilities, there's security, passenger services departments. What is it that they do? You can see there's a whole list of who does what. That if you can just scroll down, Banal. Yes, so you are able to see who contributes towards which dimension of the ASQ, but what is it also that they will be doing. IT, for example, is responsible for enablement, ease of wayfinding, but also enabling the systems that work within the airports, making sure that the screens are working, making sure that whatever scanners that security needs are also functional. But at the end of the day, we are also interested in, when we collaborate, what is it that we do to make sure that there's no ball that is dropped, no process is left unattended to. So you'll create SLAs between the departments, intradepartmental SLAs, so that you are able to keep each other accountable. So that's principle one. And that principle, when we talked about alignment and affiliation, that is the key place where alignment processes happen. For the most part, in performance management, we do see these kind of activities happening. So it's not something new, but perhaps the question is just how far into detail do you get? And this is just an example using the ASQ. Next slide, please. Principle 2. This is where we start talking about affiliation. And that is where the 3 C's come into play. So we want to make sure that now that we've understood the goals, we've understood the type of KPIs that we have, we want to make sure that the people that have to carry out this work understand how they are going to carry it out. So if I can give an example, once is the CEO or the vision and the strategies of the companies are confirmed, the CEO will communicate these to the different levels across the business. You'll typically do these types of exercises through engagements, employee engagements, stakeholder engagements. And we call that process cascading, where you start translating the company vision into objectives, and then you expand those objectives into goals. So you start being tangible, start communicating about the tangible things that you need to do. Then we contextualize, saying, now that we know that we have this objective and these are the goals, in which context do these goals belong? So if we're talking about ASQ, as per the example that we had earlier, as the example of the KPI, we know that IT, communications, passenger services are all participating in that, but they need to be aware, in the context of ASQ, this is how I participate. Then lastly, we want to seek connection. People must understand and buy into the strategies that we are putting forward. And what we do here is that we want to create meaning for our staff. If you look on the right, we've indicated then, looking at the example of the vision and the mission, what is it that AXA would say is their focus around these 3 C's? We want to remind them of the vision of the company. We want to remind them that all of us are responsible for providing a good experience for our passengers and business. It also means that we understand that there are improvements that we need to do, how we need to do these things, and how each division must contribute with enthusiasm and serve with pride, which is our culture. From the moment a passenger or a customer comes into the precinct of the airport, right till when they leave, they must be served with pride. But in doing that, we also want to understand, as a person who works in facilities, what is it that I am responsible for? If I work in HR, what is it that I'm responsible for? So if we use the example of security, in security, we need to make sure that we facilitate screening as quickly as possible, so that we are making sure that the waiting time for our customers is as seamless and as low as possible. But then we also know sometimes when you look at KPIs that are for particularly looking at the business of airports, the enabling type of departments, the transversal types of departments might not always be sure of where they plug in. Let's make an example with HR. If you are in HR and we are talking about the ASQ, you might not necessarily have a direct link in terms of a dimension that gets measured in the ASQ, but you are responsible for making sure that this business has the right skills at the right time, all the time. Then in finance, you would be responsible for making sure that we pay our suppliers on time so that we have all the tools that we need to keep our facilities clean and enticing for our customers. Therefore, when all of these things are in place, we want to be at a place where we work together to connect people to people, places, dreams, and opportunities. So the 3 C's principle is really looking at embedding the understanding of the strategies that are in place, but looking into the behaviors that motivate employees to buy into being excellent at what they do and driving the strategic KPIs to create value. Let's move to principle 3, where we talk about the practicalities of taking an objective into a goal, and then ultimately how it ends up being an individual KPI that goes into a person's performance contract. Please click there for now. Again. All right, so if we still look at the different levels in the business, you've got, let's say, the CEO at the top, who is the one who gives us the objectives, and she says, well, in this company, we want to improve our efficiencies so that we increase passenger satisfaction. When we think about how do we then make that objective something that we can actually execute, we say, well, the ASQ is the KPI that we're looking at, or is the tool that helps us to assess whether we're achieving this or not. And in that ASQ, we want to achieve the score of 3.8. She then communicates that to the executives, the next level of leadership or management. So when you look at principle 1, we had asked the question around who does what. So at that level, you start to then say, head of security, you are going to take this KPI, but you are looking specifically at what is it that security does. So security looks at efficiency of security processes and etc. The executive then cascades it down to the other levels throughout that division, and the KPIs you'll see start to align with the responsibility level as well as the nature of the job of each individual. So a security team manager may be looking at how many people are you moving through your screening lane per shift. If you can move to the next slide, please. So here, it might not be really very visible, but what we have demonstrated is that you've got a vision and you've got a strategy, you've got a behavioral framework which facilitates your 3 C's and so it looks at your pride values, your culture, your leadership behaviors. And then it says, for example, as I've indicated, the CEO, her KPI would look at achieving the overall ASQ score of 3.8. Then when she cascades it to the head of security, he needs to make sure that the subcategories in the ASQ, he also achieves an overall of 3.8, and so on throughout the different levels. As I've indicated, the more you cascade down, the more specific you become to the role that an incumbent holds. Then lastly, the fourth and last principle is a SMART principle. All of us know this principle, and by and large, we are applying it. Please move to the next slide. By and large, we are applying this principle, and we know that a KPI needs to be measurable, it needs to be relevant, it needs to be timed, so that you know that you're achieving the strategy according to the timelines that you've set for yourselves, as well as at the standard that you need it to be. Please move to the next slide. So if we look at the example of the KPI of ASQ in relation to security and the different levels. We had discussed what the KPI would look like at each level, but now you want to make it smart. Make sure that it's measurable. You'll see on your far right that each of those levels have differentiators. 3.8 by 31st of March. You are able to measure all of these things, and they are relevant to the level of each individual who contributes. Please move to the last slide. So in short, colleagues, what we do with these principles is to make sure that we are not only focusing on how well we have written a strategy, but also strengthening the practice, particularly of the 3 C's, to embed the practice that not only is the CEO responsible for cascading company KPIs, but also inspiring employees to work towards the vision and the value that we want to create. Ultimately, even here at AXA, when we apply these principles in practice, our ultimate goal is that when you meet an AXA employee, whether they are cleaning their floor, they are marshalling, they are fighting fires, if you do stop them and you ask them, what is it that you do here at AXA? We want every employee to say, I am helping AXA to connect people to people, places, dreams, and opportunities. That brings me to the end of this segment. Thank you.
Wow, a very big round of applause for my cabin crew member, Lindy, for that masterclass, well executed, given the constraints of time. You can move on to the next slide, please, Benel. I'm now going to invite the rest of my cabin crew members, my distinguished panel members. I will start with Mr. Daniel. If you can go to the next slide. Daniel, being the ICT leader at the Zimbabwe Airports Authority, I just want to find out how can airport companies leverage technology to enhance performance management processes, and what should leaders consider when integrating digital tools into a performance management ecosystem? Over to you, Daniel.
Thank you so much, Lungile, and thank you so much to Lindy for a well-presented performance management masterclass. So I'm just going to look at a few things, I think maybe 5 or 6 elements that are critical. So you notice that from the presentation that was done, there are key elements that we need to focus on. We know that the passenger expectations are increasing, the security demands are a bit complex, and obviously the operational environment is now complex. And as a result, I just want to focus on how we can enhance our performance management processes through the use of technology, starting with affordable and accessible solutions. And then we build towards data-driven or AI-enhanced ecosystems within our organization. So you'd realize that my goal here is just to enhance the presentation that has been done by providing practical and inclusive pathway that will ensure that every employee within the organization, from the runway to the boardroom, is brought on board to performance management. So I'm just going to look at, the first thing that I'm going to look at is just, we want to start small. As airports, we want to start with the low-hanging fruits, that is low budget elements or technology, and these should actually bring a big impact to our airports and performance management. So the first thing that you would notice is that there are key technological elements that we can use within our airports to collect data or feedback from our team members, one of which is Google Forms. So you'd notice that Google Forms are free. We can then use them to gather as much data as we can from team members. And then we start using that data to consolidate And then it becomes a first port of call for collaboration, like highlighted earlier. The second element that we can need to look at is the use of our WhatsApp bots. One of the things that we have done as the Airports Company of Zimbabwe is that for our customer experience feedback and maybe interaction with customers, we've just employed a WhatsApp bot. Which interact with our customer experience people as well as customers. And this is a low-hanging fruit, a very cheap solution that people can use, and even to track performance within employees. So the next thing that we also need to look at, we need to empower the shop floor employees. And these are the people where we get most of the nuggets pertaining to operational improvements. By perhaps look at simple SMS-based surveys. We can actually use SMSs to collect data from all the people within the organization. I believe that 100% of airports ecosystem or airports employees, they do have a mobile phone. Sometimes it may not be a smartphone, but at least it can receive and send SMS. So this can be a small initiative in terms of technology. And then the other thing that we can look at is just making sure that everything that we do is visible. And we also need to look at early wins, and so that at least we build trust amongst the airport stakeholders or airport company employees. And the second thing that we also need to look at in terms of how can we leverage technology to enhance performance management is AI-driven feedback tools. One of the things that we do have is, I believe these days, most of our airports are using Office 365. Which is a tool that is already licensed. And if you look at Microsoft Office 365, it has got a lot of other tools that we may not be using, but a number of times they are already part of what we have paid for. One of the tools that we have is called Microsoft Viva, which is used to collect information in real time. So you can actually use Microsoft Viva, you can actually use Microsoft Lattice, so that at least we collect information and we automate performance tracking using AI from biometric logs as well as task completion. So you would notice that for our airports, our collection or our starting point is the collection of data at the entry point. So I believe that most airports, because of how they work with shifts or how they work with employees from operation security, from rescue teams, you would notice that perhaps there are biometric systems that we use to gather data. Let that data be harnessed. And then we use that data to analyze our performance. What we need to do is this will shift from the annual reviews to continuous dialogue with our team members because nowadays the operational environment is dynamic. So we can't wait for the end of the year to do dynamic. So this kind of technology would use, and also it supports transparency and responsiveness across all the airports roles that we have within the organization. All right, the other thing that we also need to look at is within our airports is to combine the data from human resources, the data from operations, the data from safety and customer service, so that it becomes data-driven insights, or we get data-driven insights within our performance management framework. So earlier on, Lindy talked about OKRs, talked about key performance indicators, talked about we need to merge all these so that we create dashboards that will help us to monitor productivity trends, to monitor attendance and fatigue levels within our teams. This will also help us to monitor customer satisfactions. You know, the normal dashboard for motor vehicles will tell you that the oil is low. It will tell you that perhaps the petrol is low or the fuel has gone down or it is full and things like that. So a dashboard that combines all the data from the different operational levels will help us to ensure that we monitor on the go. So you would notice one thing that is critical to take note of is that if we have got better data within our organization, we would then be able to have smarter leadership interventions. But this only happens when we harness and bring the data together. And the other element that I also want to talk about to see
Thank you
how
very much,
company.
crew member. We also mindful on-time performance, say.
Yes.
You can just conclude your point and then we move on to the next crew member. Thank you.
Right, thank you. So one of the things that we need to emphasize on to integration with collaboration tools, the use of Teams. Teams is one of the tools. We need to make sure that we integrate our check-in systems into shift management as well as our rosters. These will help us to ensure that we are on point. And then lastly, in as much as we talk about performance and tools and technology, one thing that is important is that people first, experience and change management. We need to make sure that we involve everyone at the initial points as we roll out technology. Let us start with cultivating the culture of innovation that will bring everyone to a winning team. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Daniel. A very big round of applause for our cabin crew member, Mr. Daniel. Can see the passion there in his presentation. I'll now move over to the next cabin crew member, Miss Yolanta. If you can just go to her question for this panel. Yolanta, there's already some question in terms of culture that I see on the chat box. But your direct question is, in fostering a high-performance culture, what behavioral management practices have proven most effective in aligning individual goals with organizational outcomes while maintaining employee engagement and accountability? So if you think about the organizational culture as well, employee engagement and accountability, how do we do this? Over to you, Yolanda.
Thank you very much, Lungile. Thank you very much, dear colleagues. Amazing presentation. Very good to see so many people attending this masterclass. Well, culture, behavior, well, very, very tough subject. Because as you know, the saying is that culture eats the strategy for breakfast. I'm sure you heard that before. So let's see how the already been presented SMART principles can apply into the behavior management. Let me start with just touch only 2 letters and then add one more into the SMART principles, S, the specific. Well, safety is one of the key subjects across different industries. And in one of the companies that our company was working with, outside the airport industry, safety was a very key element because people in that company work in the oil and gas business, and they didn't wear protective gear. As well in masculine companies, so lots of men working there. And that, of course, created a very big safety issue of how to keep the safety in the very dangerous environment. So specific behavior management that was introduced tackled training, of course, broadcast of some of the issues that challenge that safety culture and trying to change the perception of the safety. But also they created wife club of ladies who was married to that man who didn't really go into the safety, and encourage wives to talk to their husbands in order to enhance that safe environment. And that really worked. Because of the collaboration between company and individuals, the collaboration with the families, that safety cultures was managed to improve. And that was a very significant achievement that actually measured into the example of reducing the cost on the follow-up accidents troubles, reduced the number of accidents, and also made people much more happier, made family much more happier. And I guess one of the examples of how to make the behavior performance both individual and organizational alignment. Also, I want to touch on the relevant. Then we're talking about the behavior relevance or general relevance of something. Sometimes we look in the negative point of the relevance, say that, oh, well, it's not relevant to us. Yeah, I think that you come this before. But I want to talk about the relevance as a positive thing and look outside of the box on the relevance. Let's say that you eat rice on a daily basis. You eat it with chicken and you really like it. It's very tasty. But all of a sudden you tasted rice with fish. Oh, and you went up that this is a sushi. That's something different. So that's how in the business, we look in the differences outside of the box. If we have one thing, like rice, for example, as a common thing, it's not necessarily that adding other bits and pieces will not make it less tasty or make it bigger flavor. In the organizational environment, what we again did with one of the clients, that was airport, we brought them to royal parks. As you know, in the royal parks, before they put in the roads, in the parks, I don't know how it's called properly in English, that's where you work, they just watch where the people go. They just see how people go on the grass and then follow people and make the lines on the grass where the people go. So to make the common paths. So the management of the airport was shadowing people, gardeners in a park to look and understand how they're making these paths. So later in the airport, they apply the same principle. They apply the path walk and put the most luxurious, most common places on the non-aviation sales points where the paths go. So that makes again individual happiness. So people know where they go, how they like to put these paths, but also make the organizational earn more, because when people go on the common and very nice paths, they can buy more because they feel more pleasant from where they go. If that makes any sense in English. But also I want to touch on the very last, and the very last thing that's important for organizations as well as individuals. So of course, we're all different. They will not be able, we will not find the same airports, we will not find same organizations, we can't find same people, we're all different, and that's a diversity that goods. But sometimes differences becomes toxic. Like, for example, you have very different individual or very different environment that is not making good for you. And especially in a small organization, in the smaller airports, that's much more difficult to tackle that toxic because, well, you know each other. How can you tell to your neighbor, oh, you're not good? You try to be nice to your neighbor, be nice to you, especially relevant. Sometimes relevant work in this relations work in the same company. It's very, very difficult to tackle the toxic. And that's when your outside helps. For example, in the governance, if you introduce independent directors to your governance, these independent people, like outside board members, can help tackle that toxic because they're foreign, they're outside. They're not facing the same difficulty of telling others or bringing the change. Even if they're consultants or somebody else, the different people from outside help you to tackle that change. Guys, sorry, I will need to put the wire, otherwise I will be out. Yeah, all right. So having this difference or D or put any letters you like on the smart in the end will help you to tackle differences that are too much, that are over different, they're over diverse in a very kind of negative point of view, they are toxic. So don't be afraid to cut the toxicity with applying outside opinion. So I guess that's my points for today. And thank you very much. And if you have any questions, you're very welcome to send them. I will be happy to answer. Thank you.
Excellent, excellent. Well done, our cabin crew member there, Yolandi. Thank you very much for being on time.
Thank you.
We can move on to the next slide. Colleagues, we're just now gonna allow for time for questions. If you can go to the previous slide. I've already started seeing some of the questions. To the cabin crew members, we can prepare for landing now. This flight is about to land. I saw some questions, which I believe, Lindy, were covered in your presentation. But if there is any other questions, please do feel free to fill them through. We might not be able to answer them during this presentation. I saw a question about, a lot of questions about the copy of the content. Yes, the last slide has a QR code, colleagues, where you can scan the guidelines that we are talking about. So that is available to all the attendees of this webinar. There are some questions about the dashboards. We are in the business environment that requires reliable data to have a competitive advantage in regards to aerodrome reliability. Daniel has given easily available tools in the data connection. However, does aerodrome ensure standards in this data parameter? I'm not sure if you want to respond to that. There was a question also about airports that are public service organizations may not have the power of appointing independent directors. How do they achieve a culture change at board level? So I'll just allow if there is any crew member that wants to respond to some of those questions, just bearing that the time constraints, but if there is one question that has not been addressed already in your presentation. I'll start with Lindy. If there's anything on your side, Lindy.
Thank you very much. I think for the most part, the questions that are specifically relating to the content, there's questions around alignment and affiliation. They're more really trying to get into how you actually apply these things. But for the most part, those principles that we've provided, the question around achieving alignment and affiliation in airports that are not the same. So for example, if you've got a matrix type of network, you will be able to achieve affiliation and alignment when you apply principle 1 and principle 3 particularly. So with principle 1, that's where we start talking about who does what exactly is it that they do. Then you start to think about, well, is it relevant in this particular airport or is it not so relevant in this one? As you ask more and more questions, you'll be able then to sort of start getting an alignment that is applicable for the context of your particular company. But the principles as they are, if you practice them, you will see that they work for all sorts of structures as well as complexities, as simple as they are. Then from an affiliation perspective, perhaps maybe just to think about the culture of your company as it is what will drive whether you have employee alignment or affiliation. But for the most part, when you look at those 3 C's, they don't limit you in terms of how you can create that affiliation for yourselves. So you would know what your organizational culture looks like, but also perhaps even the context of the region that you're in, that some examples that we can give, they will be effective in your environments, but in other environments, they are not. However, at the end of it all, affiliation is driven by employee engagements, communicating frequently or regularly, but also making sure that you reinforce performance behavior adequately and frequently enough. Don't wait for the end of the year when people have forgotten the good things that they have done to start recognizing them. As they are happening, you enforce. As you reinforce, as they are happening, you recognize so that you can encourage repetition of the good things that you want to get affiliation. Lastly, the dashboards. In those guidelines, there is a basic dashboard that is provided, but you can apply that principle and cascade it as far as you want. But depending on how deeply you also want to get, you might want to consider technological assistance in the form of applications and the likes. But the guideline does provide all of that. If you still have questions around that, you are more than welcome to engage the committee and we can see how to assist. Thank you.
Wow, thank you very much to the cabin crew. We have landed in Johannesburg. I will now hand over to Benel to close the webinar. Unfortunately, that's all the time we had for today. I hope your questions were addressed, but like I've indicated, the QR code provides you the guidelines that we have spoken about. Most of your questions will already be answered in those, very clear and straightforward guidelines. Of course, there is a detailed training program. There's a lot of content that we can cover, but unfortunately, we can't do all of that in 1 hour. So this was really just an introduction for the limited time that we have, but we do have a comprehensive course should you be interested. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank my cabin crew, Lindy, Daniel, and Yolanda. I have been your captain for this flight. Lungile Langa, President of the HR Committee. I want to thank you very much for your attention. Back to you, Benel.
Thank you, Lungile. So just let me go. It is this slide. So I would like, on behalf of ACI Africa, I would like to thank all the participants who joined us today for this webinar on performance management. And we hope that this session has provided you with valuable knowledge, practical tools, and fresh perspective on how to improve performance management in your respective airports or organizations. Also, I would like to thank our esteemed moderator, Lungile Langa, and also our expert panelists, Lindy, Daniel, and Yolanda. Thank you so much for sharing with us your expertise and your real-world experience with us today. Thank you once again, and we look forward to welcoming all of you in our next webinar or activities that ACI Africa will conduct. Thank you so much, and I wish you a nice day. Thank you so much.
Thank you
Bye.
very much. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.